Yo, 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 what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder. And wow, has it been a couple of days? Probably more than a couple of days. I think the last time I checked my channel, it maybe was like 5 or 6 days since I had uploaded my last video. I need to check right now. It's been, yeah, a little over 6 days. With that in mind, I am sorry it has been that long. There's been a lot that has been happening right now in Kingdom 65, and I'm going to give you an update. I'm going to give you my lay of the land. We'll give you a status update on how things are looking, and what are, some of the, if any, hurdles. What are some things to look forward to? What are some opportunities, things that we're doing well, and really just, again, a nice kind of, like I said, little landscape update here. So, let's first start off with how are things going overall in 65? Well, if you remember how we came into the kingdom, we had 9 alliances, almost 400, a little less than 400 confirmed players. We had alliances in every single region, and we had 2 alliances in Forgotten Lands, and then 2 alliances that we put in Nivola. Now, let me start, if I can. I'll kind of do the other regions first before we kind of get to Nivola Darlin. So let me start Kaltia. And you can see here that our main alliance here is DMN. There is also LG65 as well, who, again, we have good relationships with. And a lot of the other, you could see LG65 kind of moving here for this level 2 pass. We're already here for a level 2 pass. Then there's some smaller alliances around the area. And hopefully the idea here, and we'll talk about that as we go, but usually once a kingdom has started developing a little bit more into Zone 2, the smaller to kind of medium-sized alliances usually will tend to kind of get merged or assimilated into some of the bigger alliances as far as their active players, and then you'll eventually start seeing their territory kind of just be slowly taken over for things like villages, extra behemoths, etc. But typically you like to try and do that as late as possible so you can give those players opportunities if they want to join up with other alliances or maybe merge between themselves. Then we get over to Sophrostia, which we end up having NASTi. That is the Purple Alliance here. Again, they're kind of spread out or branched across 2 level 2 passes at the moment. I know there's a third one up here that I believe Sorp is going to. Again, friendly relations there. There was an alliance over here. I just don't know where their CF is that they did have. Oh, I see. Might have been a name change. But there was another one here. A few of those players had ended up leaving, going to another alliance. A few players ended up going to some of the family alliances, and then others also within the region. But for all intents and purposes, Sophrostia looks good. Then we'll come back to Darlin and Nivola here in a bit. Forgotten Lands, we have NXE, and then we also have NAPS here in the region. There is also, oh gosh, where is the other one that I had here? BBGT is another big one here in the area. Again, good relations with them, along with ATL, from what I understand. And again, prepping right now to kind of go into Zone 2. Then we get to Zoland. Zoland, we have NO65, who's kind of the big dogs there. We also have, I believe there is another one here with, hang on, let me see, I gotta find it. NL65 is one. And again, that's kind of another big alliance that has merged. They're also going to be going into Zone 2 from what we understand. And then we have, getting into Burning Lands, we have our guys Toon right here, who's in the red. There's also 65CK. Again, they're looking to go into Zone 2. I think there's a couple other alliances we might be able to try and identify. But for all intents and purposes, around the majority of the kingdom, there is unimpeded progression, no fights that have really been happening for the most part. Tiny skirmishes in maybe 1 or 2 of the regions, but everyone is really able to develop and progress unimpeded, and that has always been our primary goal, has been to come in, allow for a level of stabilization and some oversight, right, some security, if you will, when it comes to kind of addressing anyone that just wants to do harm to the players. And then we kind of get now to the Nivola and to the Darlin region. So this has kind of been where we've seen the kind of first big resurgence. Now, this is pretty common for those of you that have played Kingdom Builders for a while. This isn't really anything out of the norm. The short version is that here in Darlin, we have NWO, who's here in purple. We also have some other friendly alliances, being CHRM, and also a shout out to IBKY, because they've been great. And then if we go to Nivola, we have our NXN Alliance here in blue, or excuse me, wherever they're, hang on, where is it? Excuse me. There is, oh, here, down here. There's an alliance here. Oh, sorry, fourth there. And then if we go to the west, we have NRE. There's also been some other friendly alliances. PTW has been incredibly friendly with working with us. And again, they've been a pleasure to have on board, just along with some of the other alliances as well. But right now, we really have a situation with DS1. And the situation in short is that apparently a good amount of their players were in our alliances. Now, I don't know if this was some type of like shadow operation. You know, sometimes you'll have like these like cell groups. I've seen this happen in a couple kingdoms, even in one of my projects, where we actually had players that were spenders who joined our group in Rock. They leveled up, took advantage of the tech of us spending, and then at a certain point, they left and went to go start their own alliance, right? And then they said, we're just going to operate independently of you. And even though it started off amicable, it eventually turned into, well, we just want to take over the kingdom, right? And that's not really good for anyone in that case, because for us, we're never looking to be hostile in any way, right? It's more of, hey, we're happy to talk and to have a conversation and see how we can best work together. And so what ended up happening is some of these players left our alliances to go and join this DS1 Alliance. And there were some conversations that were happening beforehand when it came to DS1. I think some people from them asking after some of the players initially left about, hey, can we get into Zone 2? And let me point out, no one ever said no. Usually at that point, it's typically wanting to have a conversation. So usually if it's the leaders from the alliances that are starting out, and or they may direct them to me. So that way I can have some of those conversations and then keeping the leaders looped in for transparency. And so we're effortlessly communicating between each other. And we've always told people we want to try and bring in as many alliances into Zone 2 as we possibly can. So that's been something that has always been our goal. I think the objective is never to alienate or to isolate alliances, especially if they're active and they're engaged and they're healthy. And so that's always been our plan. Like, we basically have not told anyone no. It's just been, hey, we need to wait until the alliance leaderboards are released. We need to see what the general activity level is across some of these other alliances, because bear in mind, there's a finite amount of space. If you go and you look at Zone 2, it's not like you're going to fit 10 alliances into Lurkin. I mean, could you, logistically? Sure, you could. But not everyone's going to be able to, respectively probably have a behemoth, because obviously some of the bigger alliances, you'd want to try and have, in this example, a Necrogiant and a level 5 bear. Even though the Hydras also spawn, right? So it's not as though you need to double up on some of these, right? Even just going and having one at minimum would be okay. Anyways, point is that these are things that I think are important when you're trying to build and stabilize a kingdom. You want to try and include as many players and as many alliances as humanly possible. And really, for the past 6 days, I've just been, and I want to point this out, along with our other leaders, officers, and our contributing members, have pretty much been tirelessly working when it comes to trying to combat, trying to address, and even for an individual like myself, trying to communicate with that alliance. And unfortunately, we just never heard anything back. I've told my leads, along with my officers, that the leader of DS1 at the moment, we've reached out to, and I reached out saying, hey, I'd love to chat, whether that be text or voice. I just have not heard anything back. It's actually funny because I get messages now from the lead on my Discord where it seems, I don't know if it's a guy or girl, but where the player is messaging me with like gloating gifs, like the things that they'll make where, I'm sure some of you guys have probably seen those, but it's the gifs where they'll like write the letters on it at certain situations, depending on what the gif is. And it's like, oh, we're beating you or attacking you or whatever it may be. And so, again, I haven't watched all of them, but the first one I watched for probably about 10 or 15 seconds, and I just figured, okay, this is the trending direction that these are going in. But my point in saying that is, the hand is always extended. And I think the challenge can be at times when you're in kingdoms where you get these types of alliances that almost kind of go down this mega alliance path where they just want to try to recruit the strongest people and they just want to attack anyone and everyone. We actually were sent a screenshot from one of their pre-existing members that cropped it out, and it was of an alliance male And the Alliance mail pretty much read, hey, we're going to attack anyone and everyone. And I'm not sure if I can find it to maybe show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. I'd probably have to scroll a decent bit here. Oh, yeah, here it is. So I don't know if I can open this up and show you. Let me see here. Yeah, so here it is. So here's the mail. Again, this was sent to us by, like I said, an existing member in the Alliance, where it says, right, we're in the process of opening a small alliance. We will send all friends whose strength is weak and cannot war, or friends who want to collect resources and heal to prepare for wars. So all players who are less than this power can go. Not really a lot of detail, or I would say instruction for the most part that was sent as far as what else they'll be doing there. It says the upper limit of strength will be raised soon. You have to work actively. We would also like to point out some rules. Do not insult or use bad words against others. Enjoy the game. But again, everyone has their own levels of enjoyment. Secondly, we do not have laws about hitting others. You can hit whomever you want. Bear in mind, this means they're giving them free reign to attack anyone and everyone in 65, regardless of what alliance they're in. We are war lunatics, so again, pretty obvious that it's more PvP focused of an alliance. Third, you have to protect each other and work like an ant colony. Finally, donate a lot. When I see that you don't donate, I'll kick your, there you go. I mean, kind of just shows you more of the leadership style. It's interesting because this is something I would tend to see with like Russian or some Turkish alliances, and I'm not generalizing, but this is something if I play Rock, I would often see this style of tone, not talking about word choice, but tone of mail that is usually sent within, and I'm sure there's other groups as well that will do it, but when I've been playing Rock for years, and I usually come across like Russian or Turkish alliances, sometimes even some Asian-based alliances, they're just more direct. They're more curt in their approach for the ones that I have encountered. Let me be very specific there. And then it says, last point I want to say is to get kill points. I don't like farmers. If you don't get 10,000 points by the end of the week, you are eliminated. Merits. So again, you can kind of see the, type of leadership style that you're getting in a PvP alliance, at least when it comes to how these individuals and or this individual is playing it. A little bit of aggressive for my taste, but just because I always feel like you can have good word choice and you can always, I mean, again, the mail wasn't formatted. It was a wall of text, right? That's something that could obviously be an improvement when it comes. And I'm not trying to necessarily kind of give tips, so to speak, but again, just some things to point out. Now, when we kind of get to where we're at, I want to talk about kind of the future because I'm sure some people from 65 will be watching this video and maybe others from other kingdoms. Bear in mind, even if, for example, that this foothold, if you will, here on this side of the map, on this eastern side of Nivola is lost, not all is lost in the kingdom, right? Remember, this is a battle, not necessarily an actual war. Also, keeping in mind that we've really only ever had 3 alliances, and probably for the most part 2, really, in the beginning, that have actually been doing, that started out, let me say that, started out doing the fighting, and then eventually, and it started as 1, and then we added a second and a third that were in these regions. But the other 5 to 6 alliances that we've had within the family, out, and that's not including the ones that are that have been allying or are supporting the endeavor, right, haven't really been able to fight in full force at any capacity. So, it's easy when you're kind of, I should say it's easier when you're kind of the roguish alliance and you're the bully alliance, as they have been going around and doing that, and you're kind of condensing your fighting through one area. It makes it easy when you're able to kind of fight, and as I said, easier, I should say, when you're able to kind of fight on 1 or 2 fronts, because there's not really a lot that you have to go about. And that's typically why when you're usually fighting against kind of players, some of the whale players, and you can see, I'll give you an example here on the leaderboards, where you can see these players, right, kind of number 1, number 3, and number 4. Right? And that's kind of where it's at the moment. I mean, based on the power of number 3, probably will become 1 and 2 soon. But my point in saying this is that if you're trying to combat high spenders or whales or just kind of rogue players, usually, I mean, there's a few ways to do it. One of the ways you can do it if you do decide to fight is you fight on multiple fronts, right? You apply pressure on multiple fronts, so that way you are not playing into their hands of only fighting on one front, right? That's really important, where you have to pressure them from multiple points in order to kind of cause distraction, to cause delay in response time, to force them to have to pick and choose where they want to fight. So even if they're pushing on one front, you're pushing on all the others. But you also have to have activity. You have to have people that have troops. And with us being, what, 2.5 weeks in at the moment, it's just not really ideal at the end of the day to kind of ask and or force people to fight. And so this is why one of the other options, and this was something that I had proposed early, and this is more so just for full context and transparency so everyone knows, is, and this is a conversation I've had with leadership, with our management team as well, which is inclusive of all the officers and leads, where, and I've seen this work in Kingdoms because I've done this before, where you basically just don't fight at all, right? So you kind of put them on an island. You don't fight, you spread out, so you're kind of farming in a spreaded distance. You are making it where they have to go farther and run farther in order to get to you. You don't engage with them. So the example is you would mute them. So you mute every single one of their players in game. So that way you're never talking to them. And you just basically let them kind of speak amongst themselves. Again, you put them on an island. You don't engage. You don't attack them, even if they're attacking you. And to be honest, that causes a lot of boredom, right? They don't necessarily... remember, in this type of game, the enjoyment is fighting in the open field, right? That's really where the fun is. And if you take that away from them, it's something that can, more often than not, cause a decrease in general activity or willingness to kind of go above and beyond. And oftentimes you will see that those players will be bored because if no one's fighting them and all they're doing is building, that's not really fun for them. Right? It's kind of almost annoying, especially if they're spending all this money because they do want to fight. So, again, this is something that I had advised as what I would have liked to see us do. I know some of the alliances in these regions felt that they did need to fight given the situation. And I want to also point out that at the time that we chose the option to fight, that started with a few alliances, the DS1 group was a lot smaller. They didn't have as much active players. They probably had 20 or 30 people in the alliance total, and about that were actually fighting. But since then, they have been able to get more activity. And I think that's kind of, again, I view that as normal because I've seen this happen in other kingdoms where if you have an emerging alliance and they have a lot of the top players or some of the top players, right, you'll often find that some of those other players will gravitate towards where that consolidation of power is. And even if it may start off small, it doesn't mean that they're unable to recruit or that there's never going to be anyone in the kingdom that's interested in joining them, just to make that point. And so I also think it's important that we adapt what you do. If a situation in the beginning starts off really well and you're doing good or you have good skirmishes, you have good battles and efforts where you're gaining land or gaining more than what you're losing, which we had a few of those in the beginning. And now it's kind of at this point where at certain moments it's stabilizing, but it's still kind of they're gaining a little bit more ground. And that's okay. I think it's important that we look at salvaging and recuperating any initial investment that we've done, because bear in mind, this is just one small part of the kingdom, whereas all of the other areas in the Zone 1 regions are still flourishing and having players being able to level up unimpeded, which is great. And so even in the situation where, let's say that in this case DS1 is able to make it to a level 2 pass and they get into Zone 2, remember, you're also going to potentially see fights in Zone 2, or worst case, you'll see fights in Zone 3, and then potentially throughout the map if it comes to that. So again, that's why I kind of talk about how it's kind of one skirmish at the end. And then you also have Season 2 to look forward to. And that's something that'll be important because who knows, right? Maybe through fighting, there will be a conversation or a discussion that can happen, and we can say, hey, look, let's maybe fight together going into Season 2, which would be awesome. Maybe they don't want to do that and they just kind of want to go do their own thing. That's fine as well. But I think sometimes fighting can develop bonds and you can learn a lot through people when you fight it out. And, I think we really haven't even kind of shown the full force of what we can do as a group yet. I think they've really only kind of gotten a little appetizer thus far. And I also want to give a huge shout out in this video to the leads and to the officer team there. And I'm going to do this individually just because I think it really is important to give these quality shout outs. And this is just for the people who were fighting early on and have just been fighting the most thus far. This is aside from those who have been fighting as well when it comes to, fighting as well, when it comes to the other alliances that have been sending players over to help, which, again, I know I've already given some flowers out to them, but I want to give a shout out to Trip as one of the leads, Florabox, Lion, Goat Boy 1, Straga, Bearded Channy, if I even said that right, the one, and then our boy Barcode there, which I believe is what they call him now. Again, they were pretty much the first ones to engage. And then I'm going to give a shout out to NWO as well, which, oh gosh, where do I have to go for their thing? Here we go. So let me zoom in here, and we'll have a shout out to our boy Croc, to Goldie, to M Crow, to Punisher Outlaw, Svidka, Kuma, Black Devil, Creeper. Again, right, anyone and everyone that has been helping out in any capacity that you have been is more than appreciated. And the last one here is just going to be NRE. And I think, sorry, let me get over here. And again, shout out to Asteria, Napoleon, Nishi the West, King S, Loki, Burns, Artemis Vital. Again, one of the things I really pride myself on is being available and being accessible. And really over these past 6 days, as you could probably tell in my voice, excuse me, there's been a lot of meetings, a lot of conversations that have been happening with a lot of the alliances, and rightfully so. There's kind of been a speed up in certain processes and certain logistical preparations that we've been doing on our end because of the fighting happening as early as it has. And I think our players and our management teams have been responding well. I also think that there are opportunities that we can build from, we can learn from, and we can grow from. And those are things that, we typically have those conversations at the leadership level and then also the management level. Then we eventually will trickle those things down. And so, again, I just want to say I appreciate everyone's effort. It's been an absolute blast in 65 so far. And again, I've been still doing some light spending here. I still plan to keep playing my account. I've actually been really excited with everything that's been happening. I was able to join in on some of the action as well, even though just contributing mainly, mainly to flag building and some destroying when able to, or at least attempting to, is probably what I probably should say. But it has, man. It's been fun. It's been great. And, for me, I'm always kind of looking beyond as well as what's happening in the moment. And even when Season 2 comes up, bear in mind, everything's going to get reset anyways. And all of our alliances that are spread out between these regions will most likely be consolidated between two regions, right? So you'll have a lot more support, easier to go back and forth. It's just typically when you're starting out in a home kingdom, it's a little bit easier to do things with how we started. And it just so happened to be that the DS1 group is just hostile, right? They just kind of want to go around and bully people and don't necessarily want to have those conversations for what it seems to be just yet about, hey, how can we kind of work together and allow for as many players to stay as active as possible. Because the one thing that I'm never going to agree with is players that are just going around and attacking anyone and everyone for no reason, just for their pure enjoyment, because that's how you cause players to leave the game. And I like to try and have as many players to have as good and as fun as a time as they can within some level of reason, right? And so I think that's why if you were to go and ask the majority of people in the kingdom, and if you ask them, hey, have you been at least enjoying being able to level your account without the worry of being attacked? I would have no doubt in my mind that everyone would say yes. But again, you're always going to have some players who want to just do nothing but PvP. And sometimes that can outweigh when you're viewing what's going to happen in the long term. It's just, again, it's hard to shape a good narrative around that, right? Like the narrative around DS1 right now is they're just kind of going around and bullying people. As you saw and read in their alliance mail, they don't care who they attack, right? They're going to attack anyone and everyone. And I would imagine anyone and everyone who gets in their way. Compared to if I was able to have a conversation with the lead or whoever would do their diplomacy, which unfortunately I just haven't had that opportunity yet. Not only have I extended my hand out to, and again, I've reached out, and let me point out as well, my communication lines are still open. I'm always happy to have a conversation. When it comes to like their three big players, I've reached out to each one. I will say Bob has actually came into our Discord and we've had some conversations, and I think Bob understands where we're coming from, but it's just more of a difference of opinion and play style, and that's fine. I can respect that. I can always respect anyone who takes the time out of their day to come and have a conversation with me, regardless of what format that is in. If you can't voice, I understand that. If I can voice, fantastic, and you can text, great. If you just want to text back and forth, that's fine too. I think being understanding of someone's situation is very important, and not forcing someone to talk in a certain medium that you prefer or you only can do. And so again, a lot of respect for Bob for being able to come in and have those talks, regardless of, if it was authentic from him or not. It was at least nice to have a little bit of a back and forth. And he just texted back and forth as we and myself and some others talked. So that was nice to at least have that opportunity. But again, and even me reaching out to the diplomacy rep, who apparently they said got kicked, and then he got attacked, and then he joined back, and it's kind of been a little back and forth. So I'm not sure what's kind of going on there. I know I'm still waiting to have a conversation with that person just to see, what might come of it. But I want to also kind of, as I'm ending now, point out that, we have exhausted any and all means when it came to trying to diplomatically solve the situation. And bear in mind, if we would have been contacted, or I would have been able to have a conversation with whoever was the rep there, again, I'm sure we would have been able, I can almost guarantee we would have been able to work something out where both sides could win at the end of the day. But again, that only really matters if they were authentic in their initial approach, or in an approach to want to do those things. Like I said, some people just want to see the world burn. And there's not, sometimes the only way you can respond to that is in kind, right? With power that meets power. But yeah, like I said, I think COD is going to be fun, and adapting to the situation as we will. And I have a great leadership and a great management team behind us. The player base has been phenomenal. It's been honestly fun to go and speak to a lot of the other alliances in Kingdom 65. And just so anyone and everyone knows, you can always reach out to me. Excuse me. Apologies for the coughing. But again, I'm always available. I always try to be I try to be as available as I can, but I'm always accessible no matter what, whether that's reaching out to me on Discord, which is typically the easiest and the fastest way, and or reaching out to me in-game. So I just want to say, man, I thank everyone in the NASTi family for their efforts. Everyone has been amazing. I appreciate those that see kind of the bigger picture and the vision in 65, that want to be able to kind of develop their accounts. And I want to say, because I'm sure some people will mention this to me, is the very last bit that I do talk about is the idea for Zone 3 has actually always been to have fun war games, right, where we simulate real-time environments. You can really be creative in how you approach it. You can do whoever can destroy you can have multiple flags touching each other, have a big free-for-all, do one-on-ones, 1-on-2s, 2v2s, 3v3s, have big open field battles with hundreds of players. You can do last man standing, where maybe you take 100 or 200 players and the last troop or the last team that's standing wins. Again, you can be creative. You just have to think a little bit outside the box, and a lot of these situations actually do simulate real-time war environments. You can even do things where you do like 20 on 30s, where you view how do you win a battle that you don't have the numbers for. Do you delay? Is there an actual way to win? So these are things that, again, have always been planned and will be happening, at least to the best of our abilities, unless, it just ends up being, unless it just ends up being a, kind of a constant fight or war with DS1 and whomever else it may be, which, again, I'm sure for some people that, I don't know if I'd say it could be fun, but, if it's more so kind of a need or more of a necessity that would have to happen, rather than kind of being able to pick and choose when people fight. And I think that's something that sometimes is underestimated, is that choice, that option, when it's taken away from you, it's just not a good feeling. I don't think anyone wants to have choices that are made for them or decided for them in that type of negative way that impacts the average player's experience in a negative way. So that's going to be it for me. Actually, wasn't expecting for this to be 30 minutes, but I hope that it at least helps explain, again, why I haven't had a chance to upload a video in the past couple days, and if anything, gives you some insight into 65 and into the future of it. From what I hear, there's a lot of cool stuff that's going to be coming in COD, and I, for one, will be excited to be rocking and rolling with this group for as long as possible, because we really have some fantastic people here. That's going to do it for me. As always, until next time, I will catch you later.